Recently, a client of mine, a small government contractor, asked me, how much is CMMC actually going to cost us? I told them I can't answer that yet. And it wasn't because I couldn't answer the question because I was avoiding it or because I was trying to obfuscate or hide the point. No, it's because with CMMC, the cost is not just based upon an assessment fee. It's not just based upon the level of certification you're going after. It's based upon your business. It's things like, where does your CUI go? Who's going to touch it? What systems does it live in? How organized your evidence is? What your MSP actually does? You get this. You start spending money before you're going to understand any of it, and your costs are going to go up. And this, by the way, is where you as a small government contractor, you as a small business are getting hurt. It's not because you're ignoring CMMC or any of the cybersecurity requirements. Most of you are trying to do the right thing. You know that you need to get certified for level 1 previously with DOW. Now you know that you're going to need at the very least a level 2 self-assessment and even maybe a C3PAO assessment. However, before you do anything, you normally call a consultant. You're going to ask your MSP for help. You're going to buy a tool. You're going to download policy templates. And at first, I get it. This feels productive. But then something happens. Your consultant needs more time because no one knows which systems are in scope. Your MSP might come back and say they support some controls, but not all of them. The tool that you bought, well, it helps in one piece, but doesn't do the whole job. The policies, they don't match how your company actually works. The evidence, scattered everywhere. Emails, screenshots, shared folders, people's memories. So what started as a compliance project becomes a pile of cost, confusion, and rework. And usually, the problem was not the company refused to spend money, buy the right things, get the right consultants. The problem was that they spent money too early before the work was organized. And that is a pattern I want you as a small contractor to avoid, because the companies that control CMMC costs are not the companies that ignore the requirements. They're the companies that do the work in the right order. And the right order always starts with scope. So before you buy a tool, before you hire a consultant, before you worry about your assessment, you need to understand where controlled unclassified information, CUI, actually lives in your company. Because CMMC cost, the cost to get certified, is heavily shaped by how far your CUI spreads across your organization. Because if CUI is sitting in every inbox, shared drive, laptop, project folder, archive, the costs escalate quickly and substantially, especially if you haven't done the work to get yourself organized. Because you have more systems to secure, more users to manage, more evidence to collect, and be frank, a lot more places where everything can go wrong. So the first cost control question that you need to ask is not, what tool should we buy? What consultant should we bring in? It's, where does CUI enter the company? Where does it go next? Who actually needs access? And can we reduce that footprint? That one exercise can change your entire CMMC budget and bring it down to a significantly manageable cost. Because once you understand scope, you go to the next question, and the next question becomes a ton easier. So what kind of help do we actually need? And this, by the way, is where a lot of companies end up wasting money. Now, before we go on, I'm not anti-consultant. I'm not anti going after the right tool. I'm not anti going after a C3PAO company. What I am anti against is you wasting money. Assessments matter. Scope matters. But outside help works best when you're already organized. You know that. I know that. That's just a fact of life. Because if you show up with a vague request, like, can you get a CMMC compliant? You are asking someone else to define the problem, define the scope, and often define the budget. And they're not going to define the budget based upon what you actually need. They're going to define the budget based upon the risks that they believe they are going to encounter. And this gets expensive fast. So a better approach is to show up with a structure. Know which level you're preparing for. And by the way, that's a level 2 self-assessment at the very least. You got to know which systems you believe are in scope, what policies you have that already exist. Know where your evidence is stored. I cannot highlight that enough, is understanding where your evidence is stored. Now, you don't need every answer. Remember, that's why you're getting a tool. That's why you're getting in a consultant. But you do need to understand that with clarity comes the ability not to pay someone else to discover your company from scratch. You're doing that. And that brings us, by the way, to evidence. And evidence is one of these really important places that a lot of people forget when they think about documentation and CMMC certification. Because once the scope is clear and the help is focused, the next thing that drives costs is whether you can prove work that is actually happening. Now, a lot of small contractors think documentation means just we need policies. So they download templates, they change the company name, they save files, and they feel like they've made progress. But CMMC is not just about having that documentation. It's about showing that security practices are implemented and operating. A policy might say access is reviewed, but where is that access review? A procedure might say employees complete training, but where are the training records? A system security plan might describe the environment, but doesn't match what the company actually uses. If you wait until the end, if you wait until you start hiring these consultants, the cost goes up. Your IT provider has to recreate the history. Your consultant has to chase screenshots and explanations. Leadership has to answer the same questions again and again. You can see how these costs keep on growing and growing and growing, get more and more expensive. So the sequence matters if you care about costs. Scope first, then focused help, then evidence. That is how you're going to keep your CMMC from becoming more expensive than it needs to be. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why we built and use CMMC Sherpa with our clients, because it's designed to help small government contractors get organized before they start spending money in the wrong order. It helps companies prepare easily for level 1 and go into level 2 self-assessment and C3PO readiness by organizing controls, evidence, gaps, and the work that needs to happen next in the documentation type templates that you need to have to get approved for C3PO or level 2 self-assessment certification. The point is to help you become a more informed buyer of expert help, not necessarily get rid of that type of self-certification consultant help. Because when you understand your scope, your evidence, your gaps, and your readiness level, you can have a much better conversation with your consultant, your MSP, your assessor. You have an ability to control the narrative, the budget, and the scope. So if you're trying to figure out what CMMC will cost your company, do not start with the assessment fee. Start with your business. Where does CUI live? Who touches it? What systems are involved? What evidence do we already have? And what do you actually need? Answer those questions first, and you're going to become in a much better position to control the costs. Because the companies that save money on CMMC, they're not ignoring the requirements. They're not faking documents. They're getting organized before the expensive decisions happen. If this helped you, please make sure to hit a like, share. If you got any questions, go in the comments below. We try to respond to every single comment as they come in. If you got any questions about CMMC Sherpa, reach out to us, talk to you about it. As always, thanks for watching, and we appreciate you guys subscribing to our channel.